After Jack's first love got married, he tried to slit his wrists countless times. I saved him again and again, and finally, I had a car accident on the way to save him and became a vegetable. He felt no guilt and even repeatedly told me how much he loved Vivian. Every day with you after our marriage just made me love her more than yesterday. He also said that the main character in his hit Campus Crush novel was based on Vivian. All the love in those pages was for her, none for me. When I opened my eyes again, I was reborn on the day Jack hesitated to give his love letter to Vivian. I simply gave him a push. Go ahead, 12 years of a crush. Who could love like you? Let's see how you love. In the dance studio, Vivian had just finished rehearsing and was laughing with her friends while stretching. I came back in, just in time to see Jack standing at the rear door of the studio, staring at Vivian. His gaze was both lovesick and crazed. In his hand was a love letter. Without hesitation, I pushed him from behind. Vivian, someone's looking for you. Is it Jack? What's up? She put her leg down and walked toward Jack. Jack clutched the letter in his hand, then shoved it into his pocket. Nothing really. I was just wondering if you want a drink. I was going to go buy some. Vivian replied, well, thanks a lot. Jack almost ran away. I let out a cold laugh. Even given another chance, he's still too scared to express his feelings. So why, in our past life, did he take out all his frustrations and regrets on me? In our past life, after Jack and I got married, his campus romance novel suddenly blew up. He hosted one book signing after another. Colleagues at my company had even asked me to get him to sign a copy for them. They said, Jack mentioned the main character was based on someone. It's you, right? He had a crush on you for so long. You didn't notice at all. At the time, I laughed and texted Jack, asking him to sign 2 books for my co-workers. Hearing that, I felt a bit dazed. Back then, Jack had confessed clearly and then started pursuing me. I didn't think much about it because novels mix truth and fiction. When I got home that evening, I overheard Jack arguing with his editor. I can't write a post-marriage sequel. If that's a requirement for more printing, I won't sell it. The editor coaxed patiently. You're married, right? Just write about your daily life together to satisfy the reader's curiosity. I can't. Jack hung up. I thought Jack was under too much pressure and went to comfort him. Can't get it written. Do you want me to help? It's our married life, after all. What's it to you? He suddenly snapped at me. Seeing my shocked expression, he apologized. Sorry, my mood's bad. Don't mind me. I gave him some space and didn't ask further. Later, during one of his book signings, Jack suddenly left, looking out of sorts. The editor called me after failing to reach him by phone. I couldn't find him either. Finally, the security guard from our old high school found him trying to slit his wrists in a classroom. After the guard called the police, the officers contacted me. He was rushed to the hospital and his wrist had a deep gash. Asked why he did it, he wouldn't say, only holding a wedding invitation tightly in his hand. After that day, Jack stopped leaving the house. He locked himself at home all day and kept trying to cut his wrists. The doctor said he might have depression, but Jack refused to see a doctor. Every time I left for work, I was on edge, checking the home cameras constantly. Seeing him trying to cut himself, I would rush back immediately. Jack, stop. When will you get better? I ran to him desperately, stopping him from self-harming. Seeing my worried, worn-out look, he seemed to enjoy it. This is the torment I feel now, Jesse, because of you. I thought he was just talking nonsense due to depression. Later, while rushing back to save him one day, I was mentally distracted. A huge truck crashed into me while I was unable to avoid it, and I became a vegetable. Tubes all over my body, lying in bed. I had consciousness, could hear everything, but couldn't respond. Jack came to watch over me. The doctor told him to talk to me more. But what he said was, they're so foolish, thinking the main character was you. It was always Vivian. Vivian, the most wonderful girl in my life, my beacon. What post-marriage life? Vivian got married to someone else. That's why he refused to write the sequel. The day he tried to slit his wrists at our high school, Vivian got married. I wanted to ask what our years together meant, but I couldn't move. He continued, what's it like to marry someone you don't love? What does it feel like? Being with you every boring day makes me love her more. My heart felt like it was being ripped open. He didn't care about the meals I brought him, saving him time after time. My years of companionship. After all these years, his heart only had Vivian. Later, during his daily visits, he always talked about how much he loved Vivian. He even blamed everything on me. If it wasn't for you, I might have married her. But what did it have to do with me? I didn't force him to chase me. Didn't force him to marry me. It was all his choice. He was cowardly, insecure, weak, and unfulfilled in love. Why blame it on me? The only mistake I made was letting emotions and sympathy blind me. unable to see through his act. Thoughts from my past life settled as I returned to the classroom. This was math class. The math teacher, who had been writing on the board with his back to the students, suddenly threw a piece of chalk at Jack's desk. From when class started until now, your eyes are glued to her. The room fell silent as everyone turned to look at Jack. Vivian nudged me with her elbow and spoke, just loud enough for everyone to hear. "Hey, Jack's looking at you." The whole class started teasing him. I frowned, recalling some scenes from my past life. In my previous life, Vivian often stuck by my side. We weren't exactly close, but we could talk. And back then, Jack was always around us too. Vivian always said to me, "Jack's here to see you again." Every time I turned to look at Jack, I always caught his evasive gaze. He acted like a timid ostrich, never saying anything, never explaining. Until Jack confessed to me, I never doubted that he liked me. But why? Why did Vivian intentionally make me think Jack liked me? I looked at Vivian. Vivian was looking at me too, with a perfectly measured smile. But her eyes were cold. If it hadn't been for her pushing me back then, maybe Jack and I wouldn't have gotten together. Should I thank her? I thought about it and stood up directly. "How about this, teacher? I'll switch seats with Jack." Jack's eyes instantly lit up, but Vivian suddenly stood up, agitated, and said, "No, she's the class president, always accommodating and playing the nice girl role." But now she couldn't even keep up her facade and directly refused. I innocently asked, "Class president, don't you always say you hope everyone's grades improve? You're good at math, Jack isn't. If I switch seats with him, you can tutor him. Or do you dislike Jack?" Vivian glared at me with hatred. She needed to maintain her nice image, so even if she was unwilling in her heart, she could only bite her lip and reluctantly say, of course not." "All right." The math teacher clapped their hands twice on the desk. Then it settled. "Jack, after class, move next to the class president. Class president, please take Jack's math grades seriously." Vivian's hands were almost digging into the desk, but she kept smiling and said, "Okay, teacher." I smiled. When it was time to switch seats, Jack's mouth couldn't help but curve up into a smile. He quickly exchanged seats with me. Vivian pretended to nap on the desk. Jack immediately picked up a workbook to shield her from the light, afraid she might not sleep well. When he looked at Vivian, his eyes were sincere and full of devotion, as if looking at a rare treasure. I remembered after our wedding in my past life, we flew somewhere for our honeymoon. On the plane, before sleeping, I forgot to pull down the window shade and was woken by blinding light midway. Half jokingly and half pouting, I complained, "Jack, why didn't you pull down the shade for me?" Jack replied indifferently, "I didn't know you were sleeping." How could he not know? I was right beside him. If he'd just turned his head a little, he would have seen I was asleep. So it wasn't that he didn't know. It's that he didn't want to know, didn't care to know. I couldn't help but feel a bit sour. I sniffed and told myself, "Sue, it doesn't matter. It's all in the past. From now on, this person has nothing to do with my life." I withdrew my gaze and picked up my pen to start on my test paper. The next period was supposed to be PE, but the homeroom teacher had just come in and said the PE teacher was on leave, so the period was changed to self-study. Before leaving the classroom, the homeroom teacher turned back and said, "Sue, the student council notified that you need to rehearse for the event hosting after school. Don't forget." Okay, I had previously competed for the event host role and won first place. But during the self-study period, Vivian suddenly lay on the desk, her shoulders shaking as she cried. Jack flusteredly tried to console her for quite a while, but Vivian refused to speak. In the end, they resorted to passing notes. After reading the note from Vivian, Jack stood up abruptly. The screeching sound of the chair against the floor was piercing. With a dark expression, he walked toward me. "Give up your event hosting spot to Vivian." I had worked very hard for the role, putting in lots of time and effort. I coldly replied, "Why should I? Vivian is crying because she can't be the host. Give her your spot, and I'll take you to the amusement park for a day." He said it like he was doing me a favor. I laughed in exasperation. Why should I give it up just because Vivian cried? And spending a day with him is supposed to be some huge privilege. God, please take this fool away, I thought. I rolled my eyes. "Move, you're blocking my fresh air." Jack gritted his teeth, seeming to make some kind of decision. 2 days. I'll spend both weekend days with you. Are you trying to sell yourself? He was momentarily stunned. If not, get lost. I pulled out my test paper, intending to write, but he snatched it from me and crumpled it, throwing it on the ground. Do you even know how you got that hosting spot? I looked at the crumpled test paper on the floor, my expression turning cold. What do you mean? He loudly said, "You and Vivian were the final contenders. Didn't you deliberately invite her to eat barbecue 2 days before the final, causing her throat to get inflamed so she couldn't perform well. Isn't that how you got the hosting spot? I remembered. We did go for barbecue, but it was Vivian who invited me. Moreover, at the barbecue place, she ordered all spicy food, but after the food was served, she suddenly said she felt unwell and couldn't eat, making me eat it all. She herself ate a pear stew on the side. So, she invited me to eat barbecue to make my throat inflamed and underperform. Too bad for her. I'm not prone to inflammation. I ate, still participated in the contest, won, and got the hosting role. Jack's words were loud, and everyone in the class heard. Especially a few girls who usually hung out with Vivian. They instantly got mad. Sue, what did Vivian ever do to you to snatch her spot? Vivian only said she didn't feel well and underperformed. We didn't know it was you, her former desk mate, backstabbing her. Be sensible and tell the student council you can't host. Give the opportunity back to Vivian. In my previous life, I really gave the spot to Vivian. At that time, I didn't switch seats with Jack and continued to sit with Vivian. Before I went to the rehearsal, she was crying. I asked her what was wrong. She cried and said, my dad found out I didn't get a hosting spot for the event and called me useless. He said he doesn't have such a worthless daughter. Sue, am I really that useless? Back then, without a second perspective, I, like most classmates, believed Vivian was a kind and helpful class president. Seeing her cry so hard over the spot, and thinking it wouldn't matter if I hosted or not, I generously gave the hosting opportunity to her. You go host. I'll just tell the student council I have a sore throat. This way, your dad won't scold you. She immediately wiped her tears and smiled happily. This time, she still wanted to get the hosting spot by crying her heart out. But, I wouldn't give it to her anymore. I looked towards Vivian, who was lying down and pretending to be uninvolved, and asked, is this coming from our kind, beautiful, and helpful class president? Vivian's body twitched, but that was it. She continued lying there, not showing up or speaking. Jack, however, turned red with anger and said, don't worry about who said it. I'm asking you, are you going to give the hosting spot to Vivian or not? Oh, so he can get this furious when others are wronged. In my last life, after marrying him, there was one time it rained, and we needed to get a taxi home. I finally managed to flag one down, but just as I was about to get in, someone else rushed in ahead of me. I held on to that person to reason with them. That person called me crazy and almost hit me. Jack didn't stand by my side. He said, stop arguing, it's embarrassing. Do you really need to take this taxi? I had cramps from my period and could only think about getting home quickly to lie down. But he was more concerned about showing off his gentlemanly demeanor in front of others. Now I see, he isn't that gentlemanly. It's just that the person wronged wasn't his loved one. So he didn't care and didn't need to step in. This time, I wouldn't back down either. I stood up and coldly stared at Jack. We did go for barbecue, but I ate all the barbecue that night. The class president didn't eat a single skewer. Stop making things up to shirk responsibility. Who's making things up? I connected my phone to the multimedia projector and played a video. The video showed me eating all the barbecue, with Vivian not touching a single piece. The video was taken by the barbecue shop owner. She thought I looked nice and was eating heartily, so she recorded a video, planning to post it on a short video platform to promote her shop. I declined, but she still sent me the video as a keepsake. It turned out to be handy now. The whole class watched in silence. Even Jack was stunned. Vivian, who hadn't said a word all along despite being the protagonist, suddenly spoke up. But she clutched her stomach, weakly saying, Jack, what are you doing? I was crying because of period cramps. Why are you blaming Sue? Jack turned stiffly to face Vivian, full of disbelief. Vivian, didn't you just write on a note? There were torn up pieces of paper on the ground. But Vivian firmly said, you read it wrong. My stomach hurts. I need to go to the medical room. The girls who had stood up for Vivian now turned on Jack. Jack, have you lost it? Don't shout without getting things clear. Don't waste our time next time, okay? Vivian, we'll go with you to the medical room. Jack stood there, dazed, staring at the direction Vivian left, like a puppet whose soul was taken away. I knew that feeling too well. It was like when I first heard him say, the heroine of that book was actually Vivian. It felt like a part of me was collapsing, a feeling of being deceived and humiliated. But I liked seeing him like this. Vivian's true colors weren't even fully shown yet. I was curious. Once he saw Vivian's true nature completely and his walls of love collapsed, how would he still be able to love her? I'll be watching. The rehearsal and the event went smoothly. My co-host was Ethan, a senior already admitted to Cambridge University. He's been rarely coming to school lately. The school leadership invited him to host this event, reportedly to increase interest among the students. Backstage, after hosting all night, I was starving and nearly collapsed on the couch. A piece of bread was handed to me. Eat this to tide you over. I looked at Ethan and blinked. Thanks, Ethan. He stood leaning against the table across from me, watching for a moment, then suddenly asked, "Where's your boyfriend?" I choked suddenly. Ethan handed me some water. I took a few sips. Just as I was about to speak, Vivian rushed in. "Sue, we came to see you." Jack followed behind her. She glanced at Ethan, blushing slightly, then came over to me and intimately hooked her arm around mine, with an ambiguous smile. "Jack was saying how pretty you were backstage. He was too shy to come alone, so he followed me." Jack stood near the door, about 5 or 6 steps away from us. The place was crowded and noisy with other people talking. He couldn't hear what Vivian was saying. "He's been feeling guilty about blaming you last time, but he was too shy to say so." Vivian tugged at my arm. "See? Jack has been looking at you all this time. Isn't that earnest?" Jack was indeed looking our way, but if you look closely, you'd see his gaze wasn't on me. It was full of affection for Vivian. I don't know how Vivian managed to calm him down. Anyway, she's really good at sweet-talking people. She looks so innocent and harmless. When she smiles at you, you can't help but lower your guard. In my previous life, without knowing everything, I was deceived like this, thinking Jack genuinely liked me. This time around, such a clumsy trick won't fool me anymore. Before I could say anything, Ethan suddenly snickered. Vivian started talking to him in a whiny voice. "Ethan, what are you laughing at?" "Sorry, couldn't hold it in." Ethan shrugged. "I've seen people sell stuff for others, but I've never seen someone apologize on behalf of someone else." Vivian got flustered, her face turning red. "You don't know, Jack is just shy. He even sneaks glances at Sue. Same old excuses, double the sweet talk. The best way to deal with this is to confront it directly." I sneered. "Really? Then let me ask him." In front of everyone, I turned around and called out, "Jack, are you here to apologize to me?" Jack froze. Vivian probably didn't expect me to be so blunt, and was stunned as well. "Sue, don't ask so directly. He's so introverted. Even if he was, he'd say he wasn't." I didn't really want Jack to apologize to me. More than an apology, I wanted to see him feel the pain of being deceived and betrayed. Jack walked up to me. I asked him, "Vivian said you were watching me the whole time from below the stage. Are you here to apologize to me now?" "Me apologize to you?" Jack stiffened, clenching his fists tightly. But when he faced Vivian, he forced a smile. "Vivian, didn't you just tell me that?" Vivian looked at Ethan, bit her lip, and quickly teared up. She raised her head, tearfully looking at Jack. "Does it really matter what we just said?" So pitiful, it made one's heart ache. Jack seemed to fall for it. His tense shoulders instantly relaxed, and his clenched fists slowly loosened. He thought for a while and then suddenly turned to me, speaking harshly. "You used Vivian to try to make me apologize, didn't you? Sue, you're so vicious." I clapped my hands. "Right, you figured it out exactly." "Jack." I looked at him with an expressionless face. "You are such a fool for love." Jack's face turned red, then white. He wanted to say something, but Ethan stepped in between us. "Have you said enough? We have some things to handle here. I'll take Sue and leave now." Ethan grabbed the hem of my clothing and led me away. When I looked back, Vivian was glaring resentfully at the spot where Ethan held onto me. The next day was the weekend. I slept at home all day, and only got up in the evening to get something to eat. The noodles I wanted were in an alley across the street. When I came out after eating, I coincidentally saw a familiar figure turn into another alley. There was a wild bar there. The bar owner typically turned a blind eye and didn't care about the age of those entering. At this moment, Vivian wore a super short leather skirt, sexy black stockings, and heavy smoky makeup on her usually plain face, with her long black hair styled in dreadlocks. A stark contrast to her pure school image, she looked like a delinquent. She smoked a bit at the bar entrance before heading inside. I didn't pay much attention until I saw Jack and his friends coming out of the bookstore. Perfect timing. I called out to him, "Jack, I need to talk to you." Holding a book, he looked at me with disdain. "I don't have time for you. I need to go home and read." I resisted the urge to roll my eyes and said directly, "I just saw Vivian heading into that bar in the alley." "Sue," his eyes filled with more disdain, "wasn't it enough to use her last time? Now you want to slander her again?" I shrugged. "Just thought I'd let you know. If you go any later, she might be getting forced to drink." Jack got anxious and ran straight towards the bar. I got a cup of milk tea first, taking my time to follow. I arrived just in time to see Jack being kicked out of the bar by some thugs. "Idiot, thinking you're smart with all that reading." Jack clutched his stomach, lying on the ground, yelling at them. "You forced Vivian to drink. Don't touch her." They surrounded him, punching and kicking. Jack initially tried to fight back until Vivian appeared before him. She was chewing gum, blowing a bubble. "All right, stop hitting him. He's still my classmate. The thugs immediately stopped. Despite being bruised and battered, Jack struggled to get up and reach for Vivian's hand. Vivian, let's go. Vivian pushed his hand away in disgust. Go where? Since you already saw, you should know what to say and not say when back at school. Jack sat dazed on the ground, his body gradually slumping in weakness. He slowly shook his head, muttering to himself, no, you're not like this. They must have forced you, right, Vivian? Tell me, they forced you. Are you crazy? Vivian spat out her gum. Seems like Sue won't like you either. You're worthless. Don't bother me again. Get lost. And if you dare utter a word about seeing me here today, be prepared for the consequences. With that, she turned back towards the bar. Her group of friends followed, the last one kicking Jack once more. Jack stayed on the ground, not getting up. His eyes were empty, as if he were a discarded piece of meat. Sipping my milk tea, I walked up to him, savoring his miserable state. Physical and emotional trauma, watching the image of your first love crumble. Jack, you finally have your day. I watched him for a while, then decided to leave. Suddenly, his eyes gained focus, and he grabbed my wrist. Dear. It felt like my blood froze. Some called me Sue, some called me dear. Only Jack, after we married in my past life, called me dear. He said since others called me by my name, he'd call me dear. I turned around, rigid. He looked at me sadly. Don't you want me anymore? At that moment, the memories of lying bedridden, as a vegetable came flooding into my mind like a broken dam. Those feelings of helplessness, despair, and piercing heartache, the regret yet inability to change anything. It hit me hard, making my whole body tremble. During that time, I was just an immobile shell. Every day, I had to listen to my loved one by my ear, repeatedly emphasizing how much he loved someone else. I suffered both physically and mentally. That was the darkest moment before my death. I took deep breaths, trying to suppress the overwhelming emotions. I kept telling myself, it's okay, Sue, even if he suddenly remembers, it doesn't matter. This life is a new beginning. I won't repeat the past mistakes and sufferings. I won't get entangled with him again. I slowly pried his hand off. I don't understand what you're saying. I quickly walked out of the alley. Jack was shouting something behind me, but it was too noisy to hear clearly. Monday. Jack showed up in front of my desk with a bruised face, smiling as he handed me breakfast. Dear, I got your favorite dumplings. I expressionlessly replied, I'm not dear, you got the wrong person. He stared at me intently, trying to read something from my face, but I just looked at him emotionlessly. What exactly do you want to say? Jack looked a bit disappointed, but then forced a smile again. It's fine if you don't remember. This time I see Vivian clearly. I won't do anything stupid again. I will treat you well. I ignored him and threw the breakfast into the trash right in front of him. His smile froze on his face, but he quickly said, I treated you that way before. You have every right to be angry. I won't give up. I will always be good to you. After school, I had an appointment with Ethan to go over some topics, but Jack insisted on walking with me. When we saw Ethan, Jack guardedly blocked me behind him. Sue, why are you meeting him alone? None of your business, he patiently explained. There are some things you might not know, but I'm telling you, we will get married in the future. When you meet other guys alone, I get jealous. Sometimes I really wanted to call the police. I ignored him and continued listening to Ethan's explanations, but Jack kept trying to make his presence known. Even though the AC was on, he insisted on using a test paper to fan me. When he understood the topic, he had to chime in. I know the answer, Sue. I can explain it to you. When he didn't understand, he repeatedly interrupted Ethan's rhythm. Sue, are you thirsty? Sue, are you hungry? Until the desk was piled with drinks and snacks. Ethan glanced at him. What exactly are you here for? Jack straightened his back, speaking righteously. I'm worried about Sue being alone. Ethan replied, oh, and what position do you have to worry? As far as I know, you're just a regular classmate of Sue. We are married. She will be my wife. A drink suddenly splashed onto Jack. Ethan expressionlessly said, sorry, my hand slipped. To avoid Jack's harassment, Ethan suggested going to his house. His parents were often abroad, so it was usually just him and the housekeeper. Ethan lived in a high-end residential area with excellent security, making it hard for outsiders to get in. Jack often got stopped outside the community. After each study session, I would always see a bunch of messages from him. Sue, I'm waiting downstairs. Ethan is not a good person. Don't stay too close to him. Sue, if you want to improve your grades, we can go to a tutoring class together. Hire the best tutor, okay? Sue, please, just come down and see me. I read them indifferently and tossed my phone aside to continue working on my test papers. During this time, I deliberately avoided Jack. In the classroom, I treated him like a stranger, and after class, I would head directly to Ethan for further study. Today, I got home a bit late, and it started to drizzle just as I reached the entrance of the community. I didn't have an umbrella, so I had to use my backpack to cover my head and run in. Suddenly, I ran straight into someone. I quickly apologized. Sorry, Sue. It was Jack. His voice was hoarse, his hair wet from the rain, eyes bloodshot. He grabbed my wrist. Why are you avoiding me? What's so good about Ethan? How can you be with him every day? Don't you know you're supposed to marry me? Let go of me. I tried to shake off his hand, but he held on tightly. Let go. Where are you going? I said, you will be my wife. He completely assumed the role of the post-marriage Jack, using force to lock me in, attempting to kiss me. I raised my free hand and slapped him hard across the face. Get lost. Jack's face turned to the side from the slap. He was silent, but still wouldn't let go of me. The rain poured harder, drenching us both. He suddenly laughed eerily, his open mouth and bloodshot eyes looking terrifying. I get it. You're avoiding me because of Vivian, right? I get it. I'll make her pay for bullying you. The next day in class, Jack and Vivian's seats were empty. By the fourth period break, the homeroom teacher, David, came over with a grave expression. Does anyone know where Jack and Vivian are? I contacted their families, and they said both of them left for school early this morning. But clearly, they didn't come to school. The classmates, who usually hung out with them, could only provide some places they frequently visited. In the afternoon, Jack and Vivian still hadn't shown up. We had searched all the places they usually went to. The school had reported them missing and informed everyone, urging anyone who saw them to provide information. The rain was particularly heavy today, pouring down relentlessly. I felt inexplicably uneasy. After school, I suddenly received a message from Jack. Jack, Sue, look, I've returned it for you. Don't be mad at me, okay? In the picture, Vivian's mouth was covered with tape, and her hands and feet were tied with ropes. Her exposed skin had large bruises. She lay on the ground with a painful expression. Jack, Sue, come over. I'll have her apologize to you in person. Jack is an extreme person. In his past life, he initially cut his wrists for Vivian, and later continually self-harmed to torment me. He would use any crazy means to achieve his goals. I squeezed my phone and replied, where are you? Jack sent an address. Listen, you have to come alone, or I don't know what I'll do. After getting the address, I immediately called the police. The police, understanding Jack's personality to some extent, decided I should cooperate to avoid alerting him. They needed me to go to the location Jack specified alone, with the police following in secret. I took a cab there. The rain was so heavy it felt like it would flood the entire city. The raindrops endlessly streamed down the car window, making it hard to see the road. Jack's address was an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. It was well hidden. The car couldn't get in. I got out of the car and walked a long way to find it. When I entered the warehouse, I was soaked to the skin. Vivian was tied hand and foot, lying bruised and battered on the floor. Jack held a knife close to her neck. He seemed very excited, his eyes gleaming with a twisted light. Sue, listen, I'll make her apologize to you. She apologizes, and you'll be with me, okay? He tore off the tape on Vivian's mouth and poured a bucket of cold water on her face. Say what I taught you, repeat it now. Vivian, tortured to delirium, stared at me for a while, then began to laugh. Is it you? Are you Sue? Do you think Jack really likes you? That's my lie. She seemed a bit unhinged, rambling on. If I didn't trick you, how would you focus on him? How would I make Ethan think you had a boyfriend? I'm clearly better than you. So why did Ethan notice you? You know, the day Ethan got the recommendation, he specifically came to our class. I thought he was looking for me, but he was asking about you. I had no choice but to tell him you had a boyfriend. To make it more convincing, I had to set you up with Jack. But this loser couldn't even attract you and dared to kidnap me. Vivian, hanging out with thugs, was also an extreme and fiery person. She wasn't afraid of being tied up by Jack, someone I didn't care about. Why does he dare to tie me up? So, Vivian insisted I believe Jack liked me, because she liked Ethan, and wanted Ethan to think I had a boyfriend. Jack's breathing grew heavy. I told you to apologize, not mention Ethan. Who are you? Vivian spat in his face, dared to order me. This completely infuriated Jack. This Jack wasn't an ordinary high school student. He carried the obsessive and nearly insane traits from his past life. He grabbed Vivian by the throat. I told you, apologize to Sue. Vivian's eyes rolled back as she started to panic a little, her stubbornness faltering. I'm sorry. Jack, ecstatic, released her and walked towards me. Sue, did you hear? She apologized to you. Will you be with me now? I looked down, my voice low. Jack, haven't you done anything wrong? You tortured me with self-harm time and again. and I got hurt on my way home trying to save you. Do you know, when the car hit me, I wasn't worried about myself. I wondered, if I couldn't save you this time, what would happen? Jack's face turned deathly pale. Sue, you also remember everything. I continued. Jack, while I lay on the hospital bed, you kept saying how much you loved Vivian. You personally stabbed me over and over, until I lost all hope, until I died with immense pain and regret. Now, starting over, you're torturing the girl you once called the most beautiful in your life, then say you love me. Isn't it ridiculous, Jack? His body completely collapsed, kneeling on the ground. I'm sorry, Sue. The sound of sirens wailed outside. Jack suddenly tightened his grip on the knife. Don't be angry with me. I'll give you one last gift, okay? He jumped up and ran towards Vivian, cutting her Achilles tendons. Blood gushed from her feet. Vivian's screams of agony echoed throughout the warehouse. Jack was taken away by the police. Vivian was taken to the ambulance due to her severe injuries. Ethan also arrived. He immediately ran to me. Are you okay? Are you hurt? I snapped back to reality after a moment and shook my head. I'm fine. The places where Jack and Vivian used to be were completely empty. Jack was sentenced. Vivian, once a dance student, now had severed tendons, and she would never be able to dance again. She's still recuperating in the hospital. After such a massive blow, her emotions are very unstable. They say she's having some mental issues too. While treating her legs, the psychiatrists are also providing therapy. Ethan continues to tutor me every day. He's really strict when it comes to tutoring. When I zone out, his pen taps my head, saying, are you still planning to apply to Cambridge? I cover the spot he tapped, frowning. I know this question. Oh, then explain it to me. I started off confidently, speaking loudly. Then my voice gradually got softer, until it was silent. Ethan, oh, is that it? Feeling guilty, I lowered my head. I seemed to be struggling. Ethan raised his hand as if to knock me, and I quickly covered my head. Finally, his hand landed gently on my head, patting it a bit, somewhat helpless. Focus, Sue. You're still a bit away from the Cambridge acceptance line. I could only work even harder on the problems. Of course, Ethan was still reasonable during breaks, sometimes even cooking for me himself. Watching his busy figure in the kitchen, I suddenly remembered what Vivian said that day. Ethan came looking for me on the day he got his direct admission. But in my past life, because of Vivian's deliberate misguidance, and later on I surrendered the host position to her, we completely missed each other. But it seems, even before that, I hadn't interacted with Ethan. So why did he want to come find me? Ethan, I called him. How did you know me? The soup was slowly simmering in the pot, steaming. Ethan turned around, leaning against the counter. By the artificial lake at school, there was a girl who was always practicing her scripts with the flowers and plants. Didn't get it right with the grass one day. So the next day, she'd tell the grass, grass, you didn't perform well yesterday. Today you're punished to stay alone for a day. I'm going to find your sister, Miss Flower. She didn't even spare the artificial swans. When the swans came ashore, she insisted on chasing them to read to them, almost plucking their feathers. At first, I was confused listening to this, but then the more I listened, the more my ears turned red. That person seemed to be me. At that time, I was interested in broadcast hosting, but worried I'd disturb my roommates practicing in the dorm. So I went to the secluded corners of the school. I thought there was no one there. Ethan chuckled. There was no one, but people could see from the building. He was practicing for competitions, very tired. During breaks, he often saw a girl by the artificial lake chasing swans. She never caught the swans, getting all sweaty and yet laughing like a fool. He couldn't help but smile too. The fatigue from practicing seemed to lessen a lot at that moment. Later, watching her chase swans became a daily routine. Until the competition ended, he got the direct admission, and found out the girl's name was Sue. Sadly, it seemed the girl had a boyfriend. When the principal called to invite him back to host the event, he wasn't very interested until the principal mentioned that the partner was named Sue. Ethan looked at me and said, I thought, leaving some kind of memory with you would be nice, even if it's just co-hosting. Luckily, he suddenly smiled. His eyes were very gentle. There was an unexpected gain from hosting. Turns out the boyfriend was a misunderstanding. My nose felt strangely sour. I clenched my fist with a fighting spirit, saying, Ethan, wait for me at Cambridge. I'll get in. He walked over and ruffled my hair. Yeah, I believe in you. I was just about to ask if he saw some potential in me. Ethan, since you're the only one in school who chases swans daily. After the exams, the school posted the honor list, and my name appeared beneath Cambridge University. I took a photo and sent it to Ethan. I did it. All the dark, unbearable days, I survived them. From now on, I wish for everything to go as planned, and for the path ahead to be smooth. Wishing the same for everyone.